Hey guys, what's going on? It's Ash here coming at you today with a brand new pro for the channel. Really excited to introduce Hazard to you guys. He's been #1 on the overall global leaderboard many times now. I asked him about the deck that he's currently using, about ladder play and how it's different in the last day versus the first day of the season, and even more, we're going to get into some general tips to help out the average player to get better at Clash Royale. So without further ado, let's bring in Hazard. Alright guys, here I am joined by none other than Hazard. He's a top player in the game, and he's currently racing to be #1 in the entire world at the end of this season. Hazard, thanks for taking a little bit of time out to hang with us today. How you doing, man?
I'm good, how are you?
I am doing fantastic. So why don't we tell a little bit, start out by telling a little bit about yourself. It's your first time on the channel. You've definitely made a name for yourself in this game, known by a lot of people out there. Tell us a little bit about when you started playing and when you realized that you were really good at the game.
Well, I started playing back in beta on February. I think I got it like middle of February, but ever since then I've been playing. I got the game from my brother in February, got it from my dad in April, and we all kind of play together. But when I started to realize that I was kind of decent at the game, I used to push a lot of ladder, and I was always a level 10, level 9, playing these level 11s, 12s, and you know, it was like hard playing those high level players, but I know it was at least good if I was contesting with them.
Yeah, so you just continue to kind of make strides from there and just get more and more competitive?
Yeah, and once tournaments came out in July, I just went right into that.
Awesome, man. Well, is there any specific moment that you can look back to so far in your Clash career? I know you've been #1 in the world on multiple different occasions now, but is there one telltale moment you can look back on and say that so far has been the highlight of my Clash career?
Definitely Northern Arena. So over the summer I was up in Maine, and there was an online tournament that I came in second, but I won a trip to Toronto, and I went with my dad and my brother. I competed there. I came in second. It was an overall great experience. My family and I had a great time, so yeah.
That's so cool.
I was definitely #1.
What do your parents think of you being like this Clash Royale celebrity?
Well, they think it's pretty cool. They're kind of like, you know, keep up with school and all that, but like they're always really supportive, and especially because my dad plays the game, so it's kind of funny.
Yeah, that's really cool. That must be fun to do it, you know, with your brother and your dad and have like a kind of a family bond over the game. That's really cool.
Yeah, it is.
Do you play on a phone or a tablet?
Back when I started, for like 3 months, I played on my phone, but then for my birthday in June, I got an iPad Pro, and ever since then, I've kind of switched back and forth between the two.
Interesting. Do you prefer either or because I know me, I used to play on my iPad, but then I switched to my phone almost exclusively, and now I'm kind of used to it, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I prefer playing on my iPad, but gameplay-wise, it doesn't make that much of a difference. Like, I might be more likely to miss a fireball when I'm playing on my phone, just because I'm more used to my iPad, but okay. I enjoy them both.
Okay, do you tap or do you drag your cards when you play on your iPad?
I typically drag.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, it's funny because a lot of people, when I first had them on the channel, a lot of the pros that I had on, you know, back, you know, a few months ago, or actually 6 months ago when I started this whole thing, they all tapped, and then recently everybody drags. So I know. It's kind of a silly question, but I just like to ask people, just kind of get a feel. But I guess it's kind of 50-50 now.
Yeah, I mean, on an iPad Pro, I can pretty accurately, even with dragging, just like get the cards on which tile I want, like consistently, because the tiles are just that much bigger. Mm-hmm. But I've always just felt dragging was more casual and just less like stressed, and just preferred that.
Yeah, I'm interested to hear what the viewers and the listeners right now do. So guys, comment and tell us if you drag or you tap. Are you a dragger or are you a tapper? But anyway, Hazard, let's get into, well, before I get into the deck that you've been absolutely wrecking with this season, why don't you tell us a little bit about ladder play as opposed to tournament play? So what differences are there in your mind specifically regarding the type of deck that you're going to be playing in each game mode and how you pick and choose between depending on the play format?
Well, with tournament standard play, you're kind of on the same playing field as everyone else most of the time, assuming everyone has all the cards, everyone has some tournament standard. So you can really do whatever you feel comfortable with. But a lot of times with ladder, you can be kind of limited. Even me, I was lucky enough to get a max account from Indian Union. My Lava Hound's level 4, so I can't do that kind of thing. So it varies in, like, what you're able to play and, like, card interactions sometimes. And also, a huge thing with ladder is the 1 minute overtime. It might not sound like a huge deal, but there's a lot more draws. It can be more aggravating sometimes, because you almost got the win, just a few more seconds, and it doesn't cut it. But there's a lot less decks like Minor Poison and Expo Rocket, and that kind of thing. So it goes both ways.
Okay, so what about the differences in play style? You talked about the card choices and the deck choices, but how about in ladder play versus tournament play? Because of that extra 2 minutes in overtime, are you finding yourself playing more aggressively or defensively, or maybe going for the draw when you otherwise wouldn't?
A lot of my friends, say they have a bad matchup, say they're playing an Expo deck and their opponent's playing a Giant deck, they'll play for the draw with like 2 minutes to go in regular time.
Okay.
I normally, with Zapbait, however, I normally just go for the win, play kind of aggressive, especially towards those last few seconds, because I don't know why, but I hate drawing, so I'd rather lose than draw.
I think, yeah, I'm in the same boat, and it's probably not a good boat to be in, but I'm in the same. I think it's probably like the really smart move, like you said. Some people just knowing they have a bad match and playing for the draw. But I'm with you, man. I'm the same way. I always kind of just go for it, and if I lose, I lose. Now, I wanted to ask you, for the audience people out there who are listening in and maybe not might be on the top of ladder, but they hit their trophy limit, they're kind of flirting around their max, maybe they gain a few each season or lose a few. Is there any advice or tips you can give to those people out there who just want to continue to improve without being frustrated and feel like they're just grinding against a brick wall? Is there any tips you have for players like that out there, maybe free-to-play players?
Yeah, I feel like there's always going to be a few cards where if they aren't max level, they're not going to be that good. Like Furnace, for example, it's almost useless in lower level ladder play because the towers will just one-shot the fire spirits. So it's like not using cards that are worse at lower levels. And also, don't be afraid to play for the draw. It might not be fun, but if you're really striving to get those extra few trophies and you might lose a game, don't be afraid to just say, hey, I don't want to lose. It's probably not going to win, so just go for the draw.
Okay, good advice there. What about playstyle in general? Do you think that the average player is too aggressive, maybe too passive, or maybe just doesn't know when to pick their spots? What advice would you give in terms of the tempo and the aggression that one has during a match?
I think generally people are too aggressive. They think they can take the tower and, if I place Giant at the bridge, I'll catch them off guard and that kind of thing. But just take your time. You have 3 minutes, you have 4 minutes, you have a long time. So you don't have to take the tower in the first minute, but just take your time, I guess.
Do you have any tips for people to slow down their gameplay? I know that's something I struggle with, and it seems like every pro says, slow down. Is there something that maybe you tell yourself before big matches to get yourself to play composed?
Well, I have a story about this. So my dad, he always plays Giant. He's played it for like the 5-6 months he's played the game. And every time, he has Giant in a starting hand, he just plays it on the bridge. He's just like, I'm like, Dad, that's not a good play. But he says, but it is. It works some of the time, so it is a good play. Just because something works some of the time doesn't necessarily mean it's a good play. I would always just play Giant in the back, or play Musketeer in the back, or pump up, or just play passive, see what your opponent's going to do, and then catch them on a negative elixir trade, and then push. That kind of thing.
That's very good advice. I'm sure your dad's smiling if he's listening right now. Because, it's definitely a good tip there. So let's move into the actual deck that you've been playing. So it's definitely a bait deck. Can you tell us a little bit about the deck and how it works? Just kind of a general synopsis on it.
Well, the goal of the deck is just to get as much chip damage as possible, but with being able to defend those big pushes, and just make it so they can't use all their spells. It's a bait deck. So yeah, just keeping chip damage, keeping pressure, applying pressure, but not taking too much damage on the other hand.
Okay, interesting. What about the first play for this deck? What's an ideal starting hand? And are you making the first move? Are you letting the opponent make the first move? Maybe you're throwing out a Goblin Barrel or another card just to try to get a feel. Maybe you're starting out with a Furnace. What is your typical first move, and are you the one making it?
Me being a kind of aggressive player, I normally like to make the first move. But with this deck, you typically just want to play a Furnace in the middle, or Princess in the back, or just something not too aggressive.
Okay, why don't you tell us a little bit about the Princess in this deck, and then we'll talk a little bit about the offense, the defense, and common mistakes for it. So, the Princess in this deck, how often do you play her behind the King Tower, as you just mentioned, versus at the river, at the bridge?
I almost never play the Princess at the river in this deck unless you're like a few seconds left and need to get some extra chip damage just to take the tower. But with this deck, you have so much chip damage already. The Furnace, the Goblin Barrel, some Fireballs to kill their Furnaces or their Musketeers. Mm-hmm. You already have so much chip damage. Princess is one of your only solid defenses. And I feel like a lot of the time, even if you play it in the back, it defends a little and it's just going to walk up to their tower. Because they can't log it, because they need to have your log for the Goblin Barrel. So I almost never play Princess aggressively. It's just better to play her passively.
Interesting. Do you play this? I know you're an aggressive player, but this deck specifically, would you recommend people play it aggressively even if they don't have that same aggressive mentality that you do? For example, do you think that people should try to collect positive elixir trades and then cash them in with a nice double Goblin Barrel push? Or is this the type of deck where you just put the constant pedal to the floor, so to speak, and just keep on the applied pressure throughout the match?
Well, with this deck, it's not really as much about counter pushing, because the biggest counter push you're going to have is, say, you defend a giant with a Skarmy, your Skarmy goes down, you place a Goblin Barrel, and they just log all of it. So it's really not about counter pushing, it's just, so they're pushing all in, and then you, like, defend with a little bit less, and you Goblin Barrel while you're defending. It's catching them off guard like that, and just really, like, just being tricky, kind of.
What about the mirror in this deck, Hazard? How are you using the mirror? What role does it play? Talk about a little bit of mirror on offense versus the mirror on defense. Where are you using it most, and what are maybe some mistakes for using the mirror?
Well, the mirror Goblin Barrel is really important for chip damage, but normally you want to use mirror, I find, on defensive, especially against those big tank decks. Say they play a giant, or some, like, elite barbs, and you Skarmy it, they zap, and then you Skarmy again, and then you Goblin Barrel. So, mirrors are really extremely good with mirroring Skarmy. That's a huge defensive trick that you have with this deck that catches people off guard. It does so much damage, and it's extremely good.
Okay, great. So, and I noticed that when you mirror the Goblin Barrel offensively, I noticed that oftentimes you just throw them right back to back. Like, you don't delay and wait for the first counter. Can you talk a little bit about how you play the mirror Goblin Barrel and why you play it the way you do?
Well, it depends from game to game, right? Mm-hmm. So let's say their only spell is Zap. They have Zap Fireball, right? Mm-hmm. Then I would normally play mirror Goblin Barrel to finish off the game right back to back, because Zap is instant. So, like, it can't kill both Goblin Barrels. But let's say they have a Bowler to counter it. Then I would normally space it out, because if you play it too close, the one Boulder will just kill both Goblin Barrels, and that's a mistake I've made, just being too aggressive with Goblin Barrels. But it really depends on what your opponent's spell is. Like, if they have a log that can kill both your Goblin Barrels, I wouldn't throw them back to back. But let's say you want to just catch them off guard with a second Goblin Barrel right after they zap, then just throw them together.
Great answer there. Great answer. Actually, just figuring out what your opponent has as a counter and then playing the Goblin Barrel accordingly. So what about a player just picking up this deck? Maybe they're not a Zap bait or really any type of bait deck player. What are some general tips for this deck to have some early success and maybe avoid some of the common pitfalls that a normal Zap bait player might have just picking up a deck for the first time?
I think mainly you should be focused on defense and, like, not clumping up your troops and that kind of thing, not giving them value with their spells. Like, saving your minion horde for their big pushes or for their graveyard or for their balloon. Mm-hmm. Using your furnace both to chip damage and on defense just against giants and hog riders. Like, not putting your princess next to your furnace so they get a good fireball value. And just catching them off guard with Goblin Barrel placements, playing it behind, playing it in front, you're mixing it up, and just not playing too predictably. I feel like predictability is something a lot of like players mess up. Let's say you play a Hog, and then you play a Skarmy Defend. Like, if you do that, say, 2-3 times in a match, they're just gonna log it, and there's almost nothing you can do. So just playing, like, mixing it up, not playing predictably, that kind of thing.
Okay, that's great. What about the Goblin Barrel? Do you play it in the same spot, maybe like a few times in a row, and then you switch it up based on how they counter it, or do you just switch it up every match?
I really just, throw it, like, randomly. There's some few placements I like on the tower is good. Sometimes, to start out, I either play it in front of the tower or, like, 2 spots behind it, so they might miss a log or miss a zap.
Okay.
But just mixing up, I guess.
Okay.
You don't really have to play it in a specific, like, tile every time, because then they might predict it. I don't know.
Yeah, just continue to keep your opponent guessing. Okay, so before I let you go, I wanted to kind of pick your brain and kind of maybe you can give us an insider's view of the last few days of the season. How often are you playing on ladder? Are you grinding it out? I know a lot of players up there just grind all day on Sunday, the last day of the season. How do you approach the last day of the season? And maybe tell us a little bit about what it's like to be a top ladder player while the season's kind of tapering off.
Well, a few seasons ago when I finished 9th, I went into the last day a little bit low, then I pushed up in the morning, and I played a few matches throughout the day. But the last 2 days of the season, it's a grind for a lot of people, but I don't know, there's a lot of different ways to approach it. It's the most fun day of the season by far for me. I'm always online with my friends. There's like 10, 15 people online all pushing together,
Nice.
That kind of thing. But I don't know. I'm pretty much online most of the day, like the Sunday, just like pushing, testing out decks, seeing who's winning, just having a good time. Like my friend K7 right now, I was on with him earlier. He's actually #1 in the world right now, so he's doing really well.
And when you get to #1, if you got to #1, would you kind of just stop playing and wait to see if somebody catches you, or how do you treat that?
I normally would stop playing to see if someone catches you, because if you're #1, you kind of already hit your goal, and you're just gonna lose so many trophies and just maybe go on tilt if you play again and lose, or the queue time's gonna be unbearable, that kind of thing.
Exactly.
Just taking your time.
How long do you generally wait for a match?
It depends. Let's say earlier I was like top 5. Normally throughout the season it can be 10-15 minutes for a match if you're top 5. But last day it's like a minute or 2. It's really fun.
Okay, yeah, more people trying to get that final push going.
Yeah.
Okay, so last question for you, and then I'll give you a chance to give some shout-outs or whatnot. Last question, do you think that you can take down Diego B, the current pro at the top, at the king of the hill, so to speak? He's taken down a few of our top players in a row, Backstab X and Surgical Goblin. Do you want to challenge him maybe to try to take him off of his take his crown away from him?
Yeah, that would be fun. I've played Diego before. He's a nice guy. That would be a lot of fun.
Awesome. I think he might be up to the task, so it'd be pretty cool to have you guys let us know if you think that you'd like to see Hazard face Diego in the next Pro v Pro, guys. So Hazard, it's been a true pleasure to have you on, man. You're a really smart kid. Your dad and your brother must be super proud of you, and you had really great advice too. Do you have any parting words, or maybe a place where people can reach out to you and ask you for some advice if they have any questions?
Yeah, if you have any questions, just message me on Twitter at Mr. Sir Hazard. I'm pretty much checking that, responding to like questions and stuff all day. Awesome. And I'm going to start streaming hopefully next week, probably next Friday, but that'll be fun. If you want to guys stop by, ask some questions, that kind of thing, I'll be on.
Well, really cool, man. That will be awesome. I'll be sure to let people know when your first stream is going to be on social media as well, so we can stop by, give you some love and support, my friends. So thanks so much again for coming on. It's been a real pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, this has been a lot of fun.
All right, take care, man.
All right, bye.
All right, guys, so there you have it. Another first-timer Hazard on CWA Pro Tips. Hope you guys enjoyed this conversation. If you want to see him or anybody else face off against Diego, try to take him from the King of the Hill on CWA Pro vs. Pro, go ahead and let me know, guys. Thanks so much for watching, and as always, take care, guys.